What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. GoJo and Golic about to start. We have 2 hours of goodness coming your way. Guys, Notre Dame, they did it, baby. Thought they had us in the first half, not going to lie. But guess what? They went out and got the W. They are headed to the national championship. We'll break it all down for you. Plus, Super Wildcard Weekend coming our way. We will break down all those games. And tonight, we are going to find out who Notre Dame plays in the national championship. It's Ohio State. It's Texas. Who's it going to be? I don't know. Guys are going to break it down for me. It's starting now.
Senior Jesse Cofield here with you guys. We got an awesome show coming up today. As always, download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Arizona State head coach Kenny Dillingham going to join us in hour number 2. Pumped to talk to Kenny, one of the best young coaches in college football after an incredible season for the Sun Devils here. Jessica Smetana may join us from the Dan Le Batard show at the end of the first hour here as Dad, she was recovering from seeing that Notre Dame Orange Bowl win live in person. And Jesus, it's a great day to be alive out here and to root for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish here. I am still buzzing off of last night, Dad. 27-24 win for Notre Dame over Penn State in the Orange Bowl. And to Jesse's point, I am not going to lie. I didn't feel so great after the first quarter and a half of that game. Looking around at the way Notre Dame got pushed around a little bit, the way Keatron Allen and Nick Singleton were both running over them. Andy Kotelnicki caught in a hell of a game. They just looked too physical, and Notre Dame looked like they had run out of gas. And at that point, as Notre Dame is down 2 starting offensive linemen, their quarterback, Riley Leonard, goes into the concussion protocol, and Steve Angeli has to trot out onto the field and lead us down onto a field goal drive. Then things started to change, Dad, and what we saw in the second half of that game continues to underscore what's been true all season long for this Notre Dame and is true now as they get ready to go and play for their first try at a national championship since I played in it in 2012 for their first win since 1988. That's the most resilient Notre Dame football team I have ever watched. Yeah. Dad, in the second half of that game, I was not nervous at any point anymore because once they had pulled it back and tied that game and the way they looked in the second half, all I could do was sit there and beam with pride over the team that I get to root for because a lot of people talk that next man up stuff, and this Notre Dame team has lived it in a way that I have seen very few teams live it in my lifetime. That was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was a thrilling game outside of the first quarter and a half, which had to be thrilling for Penn State as they – listen, let's be honest. If you were a Notre Dame fan, you went into the locker room – down 7 going, how are we only down 7? And that's the only thing that you talk about is, hey, gang, after that first half, we're only down 7. And, I mean, for the gamblers out there, I don't think maybe very few people picked the over. And this thing went over with 41 or 31 points scored in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, what a difference in games, in game control, game management from the first half to the second half. You're right. Notre Dame looked like they ran out of gas. You know, I think players can handle the extra play, but this is the third game for both Penn State and Notre Dame looking to play 4 games to win a championship after a regular season and conference championship games. So it is more put on the players. You mentioned the players Notre Dame lost. And if Notre Dame would have lost that game, I would not be on air using that as an excuse. It's just the way it is. You play with the players that you have. Notre Dame it's just like Detroit, has been stung with a bunch of injuries, yet they keep finding a way. Notre Dame keeps finding a way. As we break down this game, we'll look at different circumstances. But to me, one of the best things that happened was the old twofer. Notre Dame got the ball at the end of the first half, knowing they were going to get the ball to start the third quarter. And they were down 10-0. And what could go worse? Your 2 offensive linemen get hurt, and then your quarterback goes into concussion protocol. And you're like, wow, okay, now we have a backup quarterback in, who, by the way, you really like as a passer, and boy, did he show off as a passer. He did a great job leading the Irish down to get a field goal to end the half to make it 10-3 and go into the locker room with some momentum. But I'll tell you, you talk about 4 or 5 plays in the game, that sack fumble that Penn State had on that drive, Danny Dennis Sutton sacked Steve Angeli. That ball was on the ground. I thought Abdul Carter was the easiest recovery in the world but somehow, and you don't know what goes on in piles, and I've tried to explain what goes on in those piles underneath, but Notre Dame got the ball back, which was obviously huge. They go down and kick the field goal to end the half. That was one of those 4, 5, 6 plays of a game that could turn the tide.
And Dad, at that point in the game, as you mentioned, I want to really paint this picture for people because at that point in the game, Tosh Baker and Charles Jagasa were in the game here. Notre Dame starting left tackle Anthony Knapp had gone down, who was a freshman All-American after coming into the season. Ironically enough, replacing Charles Jagasa, who got hurt during training camp, was supposed to be Notre Dame's starting left tackle and is now in the game playing right guard because Rocco Spindler, a veteran offensive lineman, had gone down for them here. Tosh Baker had played 64 snaps all season long going into that moment. Charles Jagasa had played, I believe, 6, and they were all on special teams against Georgia in that game. And so for them to come in that moment and still be part of that drive, Steve Angeli, Dad, on that drive, I believe went 6 of 7 for 44 yards and got them to the field goal at that point. It defies explanation. Notre Dame in the middle 8, as you mentioned, the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half that we always heard talked about for the New England Patriots on the season had outscored opponents 145-10 in the middle 8. They continue to be the best team at that in college football. We talk about winning in the margins all the time, Dad. And between that and the turnover margin and the point differential there, which Notre Dame lost last night, the only other game Notre Dame had lost in the turnover differential, Dad, had been Northern Illinois. Besides that, this had been the most dominant team in terms of turnover margin and points off turnover in the country. And Riley Leonard, 2 interceptions later in this game, as he said, he's like, I didn't hold up my end of the bargain and my teammates bailed me out. Was incredible to watch here. And Dad, I want to give a shout out to another group that we talked about going into this game. Because for Notre Dame, all year long, we have said, hey, this is a running team first. Riley Leonard's best abilities are with his legs, and could they pass themselves back into a game if they needed to? And over 100 yards from Jaden Greathouse later, the answer proved yes. The first, I believe, 100-yard receiving game from a Notre Dame wide receiver this season comes in their biggest moment here. And for Jaden Greathouse, who you look at his season, he had 22 catches all year coming into this game. He had 6 catches over the last 5 games. These guys don't see a ton of volume, but stay ready for their moments here. And Dad, the long touchdown where he breaks the ankles of the cornerback covering him on the line, then hits the safety in the secondary as Notre Dame starts this flurry of points in the second half. What an incredible, incredible display of resiliency for that group in particular.
Yeah, and I mean, even though Notre Dame scored 3 going into half, the way Angeli looked, I know I was thinking about it. I know you were thinking about it. And I know there were plenty of Notre Dame fans thinking about it, saying, you know what? Maybe you leave Steve Angeli in. If this is a game where we're going to have to pass the ball, maybe Steve stays in, even if Riley Leonard is able to come back because of the way he just passed the ball down the field. You were like, okay, he's putting the ball on the money, letting receivers run after the catch. The ball was incredibly accurate. I know I was thinking about that, and they said Riley Leonard cleared concussion protocol and was coming back to start. And he hits that monster out and up play to running back Aeneas Williams, which was, I was like, oh, okay. All right. He dropped that one on a dime to Aeneas Williams. But, yeah, I'm sure there were other Notre Dame fans thinking that as well. And Riley Leonard helped pull this game out with not only with his legs, which we know he can do, but with his arm as well.
He certainly did. That pass and the confidence. I think as you look down this, what allows a Notre Dame team like this to be as resilient? Because everyone's heard it now at this point deep in the tournament, but it bears repeating. Down your best cornerback and probably best defensive player overall on his best day in Benjamin Morrison. Down your best defensive tackle and defensive lineman in Riley Mills. You had already been down Boubacar Traore on that defensive front here. Jordan Botelho on that defensive front. And then offensively to lose 2 starting offensive linemen. And, by the way, have your running back, Jeremiah Love, your super weapon at that position, coming into this game wearing a knee brace here. All of those things to overcome. comes from a coach that shows you day in and day out he believes in everyone on this roster. And Dad, the belief to not only send Riley Leonard back out there when probably half the fan base is crying out, hey, maybe we rock with the other guy, but then to immediately put the ball in his hands as a passer and say, we're going to give you that same opportunity to impact the game in that way. And then for him to go out and deliver, that resonates everywhere, constantly having it reinforced that this coaching staff believes in you to a man.
Yeah, and listen, there were a couple of plays in that game. Drew Aller threw 2 interceptions that became non-interceptions because they were both in the end zone, and there was holding on one call, which was holding against Notre Dame, and there was pass interference on another call, which I know Notre Dame, and listen, the idiot who's throwing bottles on the field. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just ridiculous. But that interference call on Tyler Warren where we had an interception, that was the right call. I mean, you have to look back. If you don't look back and make a play on the ball, if you touch the receiver, they're going to call it. And Tyler Warren was touched. Now, not the smartest throw in the world. There were 3 defenders there. But when you have a 6'6", All-American, best tight end in the game, and that dude is a stud, by the way, You take your chances on a jump ball. But Drew Aller underthrew it. The defender didn't play the ball and ran into Tyler Warren, and another defender intercepted it. I hate to say it, as a Notre Dame fan, I sat there and watched it and said, this is the right call. I mean, it was blatant, and you have to make that call.
Completely agree. And you brought up the point. Let us stop and take a second. Tyler Warren is going to make so much money playing professional football. That man, that was Gronkowski-esque, Dad, in terms of the physicality and just inability for great defenders to bring him down. Xavier Watts is a great defender, and there were plays where he looked like Tyler Warren was twice his size, and he was the only viable passing threat, Dad. 0-4 targeting wide receivers in that game was Penn State after a year where, as we had documented and you brought up on this show, Tyler Warren had more catches combined than the 4 other highest caught receivers for Penn State. It was a group that struggled mightily, and in this game, it didn't look like they were going to be necessary. And when we got asked the question about if Notre Dame could pass themselves back into the game, they answered the question yes, and Penn State, Dad, answered that question no. That last play, you mentioned 2 interceptions. Drew Aller had been begging to throw it to Notre Dame all night until that final interception where, kind of similar, and they brought it up, Greg McElroy and Sean McDonough post-game with Scott Van Pelt, similar to what we saw at the end of the first half of the Georgia game where Kirby Smart gets the ball back and he's got a decision to make here. You've got a backup quarterback in the game who had passed it pretty well. Do you go and get aggressive? Notre Dame strip sack later in that game. Decision ages poorly. And in this game, the conversation going on in the booth was, hey, do you push it right now with Drew Aller, knowing the night he's had as a passer, knowing how off he's looked? And Penn State opts to go and try and push it with under a minute left. And that's where the Christian Gray interception comes up. And again, another guy like, Dad, you could do the resilient story, micro and macro, for so many guys on down through this roster. Christian Gray at the top of the list. Think about where that kid was probably at coming off the USC game where he was off-targeted, struggled mightily, and then ends up with the pick 6 at the end of that game that helped swing the balance. Here's same deal. He was the author of that first defensive holding that you mentioned that led to a Penn State field goal, which should have been a touchdown if it were a better ball thrown to the running back. And then to come up at the end of the game and be able to make that big play yet again. This group is unbelievable. I have never seen this. A movie football team in terms of how they respond to adversity and how the next man up has gone for this team all season long. I've never been as proud of watching a Notre Dame football team as I have of this team and the things that they consistently display.
So you get to the last drive for Penn State, and you wonder, should they, and you mentioned how against Georgia, Notre Dame gets a strip sack, scores right before half, goes up 10, and the decision by James Franklin to go for it. And a lot of that, and Mike, you've called games, you call games, I call games. The scenario is normally before a half or a tie game at the end, you run that first play. And if that first play gets you a good positive effect, you go for it. And the first play, there were 38 seconds ago, Penn State had the ball on their own 15-yard line, not really the greatest place to start. So you run a play and you see what happens. and a run for Nicholas Singleton. And by the way, Penn State gained over 200 yards rushing. He gains 13 yards on the carry. So now you're at the 28-yard line. You come off a 13-yard gain. You have your timeout. So you're like, okay, this is kind of the scenario where you go for it. And the one thing about Drew Aller, while not a great passer, one thing he doesn't do is turn the ball over. He may not be the most accurate passer in the world, but he is not known for turning the ball over. And late pressure up the gut in his face. And now he said he was trying to dirt the ball, and he said he should have just thrown it away. But he may, if I'll give him the benefit of the doubt if that's what he said. But that scenario of throwing the ball late over the middle, every analyst and you and I will chime in. You can't do it. You just can't do it as a quarterback. Pressure up the gut in your face, a late throw kind of behind you over the middle. You just can't do it. Now, again, he said he was dirting the ball and said he should have just thrown it away, and then they would have, I'm sure, probably just played for the tie. But that's why they went for it, because of that first run and 13-yard gain. They said, okay, we have the timeouts. We just need to get in field goal position. And, boy, Drew Aller would love. You feel bad for these players who make the mistakes, but obviously it's part of the game. And a lot of times it's not who wins the game, but who loses the game or who makes a mistake to put the team in position. And then, quite honestly, Notre Dame on the final drive, 3rd and 3. If they don't get that 3rd and 3, they're not in field goal range. And they run a roll left and a little dump pass to Greathouse, who ends up gaining 10 yards. And then it's just put it in position for Mitch Jeter, who has been just money in the playoffs, to end the game. I mean, what an exciting game. Obviously, if you're a Notre Dame fan, much more exciting than not.
I can say Mitch Jeter, another one of those tales. You heard all about his dad, who's the chiropractor who helped get him ready after dealing with a season-long injury to his groin, where we saw him miss a ton of field goals. Notre Dame's field goal kicking situation looked like the worst one in the playoff field, and now Mitch Jeter steps up in that moment and becomes Mr. January as everyone plays off the last name and hits the game winner there. But you're right, Dad. Another example of the confidence and synergy among coaching staff and players. For Mike Denbrock to call, that's the play that Andy Reid calls for Patrick Mahomes, Dad, where you trust your veteran quarterback to say, we're going to roll you out, and if it's there, you toss it, and if it's not, you go forward, you keep burning clock, you don't put the ball in harm's way, and we get out of here with at least an attempt at the field goal.
And you roll left. I mean, a normal situation is to roll right for a right-handed quarterback to look for you. Because when you roll out, you're cutting half the field off. And Greathouse just planted himself 2 yards past the first down sticks. It was an easy pitch and catch, but I agree. It was a heck of a play call for a game that I mean, was difficult to watch in the first half, and you just kept hoping and wondering in the second half. And Notre Dame moves on to their second national championship since you and your brother played in it in 2013.
Overcoming some demons inside that Orange Bowl stadium, to say the least. Now they'll move on to Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, as they are the first half of the national championship picture that takes shape here. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the other half here. Ohio State. Hey, good luck trying to top what we just saw last night, fellas. I know it took a half to get going, but a classic played in the Orange Bowl there. And one of the players, Dad, that helped author that classic, Penn State defensive end, All-American Abdul Carter, announced that he's entering the 2025 NFL Draft. Carter, Dad, a part of a team in a Penn State effort, 5 sacks and 8 tackles for loss against Notre Dame in that game. They looked dominant up front. Abdul Carter himself, 5 tackles in that game, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, and playing, Dad, basically without a shoulder. They talked a lot that night about how he lined up over the right tackle so that he could use his right arm that was functioning while his left arm was basically there, and the get off and the athleticism still basically made that arm a moot point. That was an incredible performance by him in that Penn State defensive front, and a guy who is going to make a ton of money this spring, no doubt.
We saw him when we were walking off the field when we did the pregame for Penn State, their first playoff game against SMU. Remember, we were walking off the field and Penn State was coming on the field. And I was 2 feet away from Abdul Carter going, my God. I mean, 6'3", listed at 259. Now, I don't know if he's that heavy or that big, but just an unbelievable looking athlete. I mean, just a stud. And he, like you said, They were smart. They lined him up on the left side of the defense, so he'd have to use his right arm more. Dude is an absolute terror, and no doubt he's going into the draft. He'll be an extremely high pick. So Penn State loses him. Notre Dame will get Jeremiah Love back. Jeremiah Love, before, again, we go on, had probably the most impressive 2-yard touchdown run I have ever seen. Stopped at the line of scrimmage. Literally, he was hit during the run by 5 Penn State players and still scored. It was unbelievable. And then I think it was his 7th hurdle of the year. He hurdled linebacker Kobe King. You looked up in the break. He does have a track background. He's a track champion from Missouri. He hurdles like an Olympic hurdler. Rarely do you see guys clear the defender. Sometimes they'll catch a foot or a leg on the defender. He clears the defender, and he jumps higher than any running back or receiver I've ever seen try and jump. And he did it for basically, it was either going to be a 2-yard loss. He turned it into a 2-yard gain. It was unreal with a bad knee.
I would say he did that on a night where he had told the broadcast crew, I'm not going to go and hurdle in this game because of the knee. There was all the talk in the lead up about how he looked in warmups for him and Abdul Carter as 2 of the more important players for each team, and both found a way to go out there and be incredibly effective. But you're right. That Jeremiah Love, my firstborn son, Jeremiah Watts Golic, Jeremiah Xavier Golic, I haven't figured it out yet, but those 2 young men and what they have meant to that program. My middle name, my confirmation name is already Darius. I grew up Catholic, and so you had to pick the confirmation name. It's Darius because of Darius Walker, the former Notre Dame running back who was a star when I was a kid. So lest you think that I am above such behaviors here, no. Jeremiah Love and that touchdown run, pun fully intended, all hard on that one. One of the best runs you'll see all year, a true get-off-me performance. He will be back and likely be a very high draft pick come next year's draft cycle after his junior season, as he's such a true sophomore. But Abdul Carter, again, entering the NFL draft, Dad. He is number 2 on Mel Kiper's big board there. Really cool picture before that game. I think it was him, Micah Parsons, and LeVar Arrington. A bunch of the 11s in Penn State history. That number that's so soaked in lore. And seeing him wander over. I'm not going to lie, Dad. When I saw them taking that picture and swagging out in pregame warmups, I got a little nervous because he was imbued with all of that power from some of the best Penn State linebackers we have ever seen. And I thought, okay, that's a little too cool for me to not think it's going to translate to the field somehow. It certainly did, but thankfully not enough. So he moves on to the NFL. Congratulations on a stellar career at Penn State and what will surely be the same in the upcoming NFL draft. Jesse, speaking of a game with a lot of draft picks, let's look ahead to tonight.
Yeah, let's talk about the Cotton Bowl. Okay, so Ohio State, Texas. Before we get into it and break it down, let's hear from Ryan Day. So he had some thoughts on the playoffs and how things are different with the longer season.
The Cotton Bowl experience is very, very different than it was last year. Even you come in for a couple days and then you're back home. It's just like a road game, and these games come week after week after week, and so being consistent is very, very important. I feel like there were times in college football when there were these roller coaster of emotions and just. It was a little bit more highs and lows, where the consistency of the NFL, because the length of the season, is a little bit more noticeable. And I think that's probably what we're seeing now more than ever.
Well, guys, consistently both of these offenses have put up an average of at least 34 points per game. So 2 high-flying offenses. Who do you think has the edge in this one?
Yeah, listen, I think no doubt right now, based off what we've seen most recently, Dad, it's going to be this Ohio State group. Now, remember, going back to the game against Clemson, Texas had a monster day on the ground there, 4 touchdowns, over 200 yards rushing in that game. But against Arizona State, that was a team that looked shook in the second half, while Ohio State authored the win of the tournament so far, blowing out Oregon. So I think right now the Buckeyes are the hottest team in the sport and are going to be seen as the prohibitive favorite for that reason. But has anything in the lead up to this game changed the way that you've thought about this and what chance you give Texas in this game?
No, I mean, we've all said if Ohio State plays the way they played against Tennessee and Oregon, that they're going to be very, very difficult to stop. Certainly not impossible, but very difficult to stop. What's interesting in this game is Ohio State has a number 1 defense by yards in the country and number 1 against points in the country. Texas is number 3 by yards and number 4 by score, yet the over is 53.5. I mean, you just, because you see the power of these offenses. You've seen it on display for Ohio State, putting up over 40 in 2 games, and Texas has put up over 30 in 2 games. I listen, you have to give the edge to Ohio State the way they're playing by their lines of scrimmage, and that's Ohio State missing a center and a left tackle. Looks like Texas is getting a lineman back, which certainly is going to help them. But the lines of scrimmage for these teams, and we talk about the Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver for Ohio State, the true freshman, and what an impact he has. Well, I mean, Texas has one as well. Edge rusher Colin Simmons. He won the Sean Alexander Award as the nation's top freshman. He's 18 years old. He's 6'3", 6'4", 245 as a freshman, led Texas with 9 sacks. So that's going to be a hell of a matchup with them as a rush defense, trying to get pressure on Will Howard, who has, obviously Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka as far as receivers to look forward to. So even though these are 2 unbelievably tough defenses, the expectation is that it's a high-scoring affair.
To color in what you just mentioned there, too, for the Texas side, Cameron Williams, their right tackle, expected to be back for this game. Kelvin Banks, their star left tackle, who is expected to be one of the first offensive linemen off the board, had dealt with some injury in the lead-up, but it was actually Cameron Williams that had been hampered in that last game. And you're right, the Ohio State offensive line, Dad, to me, is one of the reasons why I feel like they're capable of winning a national championship now. Because coming into the season, that group was a question mark. Overall, after last season's performance, it was how much could Chip Kelly coming in the scheme help? How much could an influx of talent with a guy like Seth McLaughlin coming over from Alabama help? He ends up going out here and authoring an incredible season, but gets lost, unfortunately, to that Achilles injury in practice. And so Carson Hinsman, who was one of the starters last year, has to go back in there, and you get that reshuffled offensive line of him, Donovan Jackson kicking out to left tackle, which I've said should be a story on par with what Joe Thuney's done. And Joe Thuney may get relief from that in the NFL playoffs, where DJ Humphries will be back. There is no safe harbor. Donovan Jackson is a left tackle now till the end of his career for the Buckeyes, and what he's done there is nothing short of remarkable. And so those guys, to go along with to Shabola, with Josh Fryer on the right side, they have steadied and now become a group, Dad, that, hey, maybe they're not going to be the strength of this Ohio State team just because the rest of the roster is so good, but you can't go there for easy wins now. If you're Texas up front defensively, you're going to have to earn it. And so now it's provided a safe space for Will Howard to go out there and operate and pull the strings in an offense that you mentioned has the best weapons left in the tournament, I think, by far, especially because Jeremiah Smith looks like the best player in the sport.
Yeah, and, you talk about Quinn Ewers. He's thrown, a touchdown in 26 consecutive games. Been interrupted by him missing games, but games he has started. But to me, we talk about lines of scrimmage. To me, it's which Texas rushing attack ends up showing up, right? They rushed for 292 yards and 4 touchdowns against Clemson, which had allowed 160 yards a game. But against Arizona State, they did carry the ball 30 times for just 53 yards. Now, kudos to Arizona State for the tough run defense, where, again, we're going to talk to Arizona State head coach Kenny Dillingham in a little bit on the show. But they obviously – and that game ended up being obviously a close game. So which rushing attack, and oh, by the way, Ohio State's 5th best in college football and giving up just 92 yards rushing. So can Texas, we always know establishing the run helps a passing game so much. And Texas, in the playoffs alone in the 2 games has been hot and cold.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you look at that matchup and breakdown, Clemson, while they get the reputation, actually this year was allowing just over 160 yards per game on the ground this college football season. Arizona actually markedly better at 112.9, and to your point, Ohio State now the final boss when it comes to that. And we talked about the defenses left in the tournament with the Final Four between Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas, and Ohio State, some of the best in all college football across the board statistically. And so, Dad, that's the place where I probably have the most doubts for Texas is being able to go up against a group where, we talk so much about the Ohio State bookends and what JTT and what Jack Sawyer are capable of out there, their future high-profile draft picks, but Ty Hamilton, Tyleik Williams, the guys in the interior for this Ohio State defensive line, incredible, big-bodied freak athletes that hold up at the point of attack very well. Now, there was a point in the year around the Nebraska game where I wasn't sure that was going to be true. Those guys have looked renewed in their effort as of late. And so, I don't know, as you mentioned, looking at this one, Ohio State a 6-point favorite, the over-under at 53.5. It feels weird to pick the under in a game where we just saw the over hit last night for Notre Dame and Penn State. So I'm probably inclined to believe, even with the caliber of defenses here, that we're going to see a fair amount of points. I just think Ohio State still, at this point in my mind, is too much in playing great football. It would take a regression from Will Howard, especially when it comes to turnovers, for Texas, I think, to get back into this game and to really be able to pull this thing off.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a game of big plays, something that Notre Dame and Penn State weren't known for. They weren't known for downfield passing. Now, you had the one long touchdown pass to Greathouse where he broke the defender's ankles and then made a move on the safety and made it a long touchdown pass, and Penn State had a couple of them. But for the most part, those aren't big play teams. These two are big play teams, especially Ohio State with that friggin' freshman wide receiver, which is just, dude, would be just a man as a true freshman. And these are two teams that have had the latest national championships. We talked about Penn State and Notre Dame. Penn State had been the furthest back at 86, and they won't have a chance this year. Notre Dame was 1988, so they obviously have a chance to freshen that up a bit. For Texas, it was 2004. They played in the national championship game in 2009, but lost. But they last won it in 2004. And Ohio State won it. They were the first in the first year. Your guys' championship, I think, was the last one where it was just the BCS, the top two. And then it went to 4 teams, and Ohio State in 2014 was the first winner of the national championship. So they won the latest in 2014.
Yes, that was the Cardale Jones season on their third-string quarterback. He makes the run with Zeke Elliott, that offensive line, and the rest is history there. Texas will certainly be comfortable on this one. They have played in more Cotton Bowls than any team in the game's history, with 23 appearances there. And Steve Sarkisian, you mentioned 2008, 2009's got it feeling like that. Back-to-back 12-win seasons for the first time since 2008 and 2009 for this Longhorns team that's also the only one to reappear in the college football playoff each of the last 2 years at this stage of the 4-team level. So Texas certainly the underdog tonight, which I'm sure Sark relishes the opportunity to go out there and accomplish, but they are going to have all of the trappings of home down there at the Cotton Bowl as they get set to take on a Buckeyes team and Ryan Day that we talk about it a lot. Man, Ryan Day weathered the storm coming off that Michigan game and has weaponized that into 2 of the best wins that we've seen all season long, and a team that now seems to have tapped into the full capability of that roster. So should be another barn burner tonight, we all hope, as we try and set the back half of the national championship. Coming up next, some big news. Join us around 9:35, recollect on their season and give us a view of what he saw from this Texas team in their matchup in the quarterfinals, as well as the outlook on their program going forward. So much built so quickly out in the Valley of the Sun. We'll also get to our acrostic preview of the NFL wildcard weekend. And Dad, I saw Pat McAfee and the guys ask about it yesterday on their show here. The NFL, do they just ditch the Super wildcard weekend? Are we not doing that anymore? You are someone who calls the Sunday Night Football games for the NFL on Westwood One. So was there some sort of edict sent out that we're ditching the Super?
No, I think they just decided, listen, let's not hype it up anymore. I mean, they don't need to hype it up. It's the NFL, so it's still king. So there's no reason to call it. It's wild card weekend. I mean, there's no super wild card weekend. Then the next weekend is regular wild card weekend. There's just one wild card weekend. So it's just wild card weekend.
But they were going ham with it. They were going crazy with it last year.
Yeah.
And now it's just in the wind.
Like, did you not focus group that enough to get what you thought you were going to get out of it? And I thought the idea, Dad, was, hey, you added teams to the playoffs here. We know that now you've only got the 1 seed, the bye going to the 1 seed. And so you are getting bigger and better teams in the mix for all this. So that felt super. If we're not going to use super for that, what are we ever going to use Super for here? You know what? Mama called him Clay. I'm going to call him Clay. It is Super Wild Card Weekend to me still in my heart.
I think it's like the NCAA tournament where the Tuesday and Wednesday games are the play-in games, but the NCAA wants you to call it the first round. Well, we all know it's not the first round. It's play-in games. It's Wild Card Weekend. It's not. It's a super. It's Wild Card Weekend. I'm fine with it. It's just one less word I have to say on air.
You know what? This is like college trying to get me to call it the 2-minute timeout and not the 2-minute warning. Yeah. I'm not calling him dad, not even if there's a fire. We need to grow up in college and just call it what it is at this point. So
yeah, exactly.
We'll see on that front. But again, the Acrostic Super Wild Card Weekend preview coming up off the top of the next hour here. Hopefully Jessica Smetana just going to come crash landing in here at some point right now. She's getting ready for the Le Batard show, but she was in the Orange Bowl last night. I want to take the temperature with her dad, because I saw a tweet from her and heard from her last night that in the midst of the celebration here, she said, "I can't even describe the vibes in the stadium after that Christian Gray interception. My entire section erupted. People were screaming, children crying, and somehow I found myself dapping up my childhood hero, Ryan Clark, who his son Jordan Clark, one of the great players in the Notre Dame defense, the nickel back there." So it sounds like Smetty had herself a time last night being the Notre Dame representative down there in South Beach at the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, and it sounds like if we don't have her on the show, we know why, that she had herself a time last night. and maybe, it's always a crapshoot with a late game and an early possibility of an appearance on who's going to show.
Yeah, I am counting on her being our representative on what we know is a largely Miami-based and Miami-filled show in the Dan Le Batard show to go out here and spread Notre Dame propaganda all up in their grills right now with those golden canes. So, Smetty, if you can hear us right now, we love you and we support you no matter what. Dad, the other news on the college front here that was interesting. Notre Dame's last opponent, Georgia, we know was without their starting quarterback, Carson Beck, in that game. Gunnar Stockton ends up leading the charge and playing pretty well for the most part outside of that strip sack that you can't really put too much on the kid, maybe some pocket presence there. But his first start against this Notre Dame defense acquitted himself pretty well. Well, Carson Beck, who after the injury suffered in the SEC championship game, had originally declared for the draft, announced this weekend, or on Thursday, that he was actually entering the transfer portal. So he declared for the draft on the 28th, but now reversed course and entered the transfer portal with a do not contact label, Dad. So more than likely already a destination in mind. Sources told ESPN that Miami, the likely favorite there for people that read the tea leaves in the background here. He has been, I believe, dating one of the Cavender twins. And so both of them at Miami again now. A lot of people assumed, he would just go down there and be with his boo thing at a place that also at Miami has a ton of NIL money, as we've seen, is going to be without a quarterback as Cam Ward goes to the NFL level. So, Dad, are you surprised at all that Carson Beck would not go back to Georgia in the midst of all this? Because it feels like it would still be his job. I don't know if Gunnar Stockton felt like the kind of prospect like an Arch Manning at Texas that was going to push him out of his seat.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that. Quite honestly, I was first surprised when he said he was going to enter the draft coming off of elbow surgery. I thought, I guess the only thing I thought was it's a weak class and maybe he could show something, but he can't show anything. Obviously, he has tape, but as far as combine or anything with the elbow surgery. But you mentioned the do not contact. Jesse, shouldn't you not move for a guy or a girl? Either way, should you not move somewhere for a girl or move somewhere for a guy? I mean, isn't that,
especially when you're in
upon?
college. Yeah, especially when you're in college. This reeks of, oh God, if I'd come home and told my parents I was transferring to be closer to my boyfriend, no. Intervention. That is an intervention moment. Also, our potential NFL team's going to be like, this is a character flaw. I don't know. It doesn't look great.
Jessica Smetana joins us now from the Dan Le Batard show. Jessica, does that sound like a character flaw to you?
Honestly, I'm only 5% aware of what happened during the day yesterday with Carson Beck because I was out tailgating at the Orange Bowl and I saw this graphic on Twitter and I was scrolling. I was like, I can't worry about this right now. There's bigger fish to fry tonight. So, yeah, that's really weird. I can't believe that happened yesterday.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
I would be curious for the reception. I'll be curious for the reception from the Golden Canes on your show later on. But Smitty, you mentioned it. You were out there tailgating. You were at the Orange Bowl last night. You're dapping up Ryan Clark as Christian Gray seals the game. So take us inside the sights and sounds of the day as Notre Dame punched their ticket to the title.
Oh my God. That was the most insanely stressful, crazy Notre Dame football. And like, I know that sounds crazy. We've seen this team play in close games before, and we've pulled out our hair watching them, but I cannot believe Notre Dame pulled off that second half. It felt so dire at the end of the first half. Notre Dame was struggling so much on the line of scrimmage. Penn State just looked like the better rested, more dominant team, and they were pushing Notre Dame around. But Steve Angeli, with the drive of the century, gets Notre Dame a field goal going into the half. And then they come right back out in that middle eight, score the touchdown to start the third quarter. And it suddenly felt like it's a tie game. Like Penn State didn't take advantage of that slow start from Notre Dame. And now Notre Dame's back in it. And the way that those last two quarters played out, I was sitting in the player family section, like you mentioned. So Ryan Clark was right a couple seats away from me. Xavier Watts' family was next to me. Xavier Watts' family was like consoling me during the game. Like they were rubbing my back. They were like, it's going to be okay. Because I had my head in my hands during the second half. I couldn't believe what I was watching. And I was just, Mike, I was freaking out. It was unbelievable. And after they won, Jaden Greathouse's dad also was next to me. I gave him the biggest hug. I was like, your son won us the game. It was just like euphoria, gold confetti, oranges everywhere. I've never felt that happy to be a Notre Dame fan in my life. And that's, saying a lot because I love Notre Dame football so much.
As a quick aside, the calmness of Mitch Jeter's dad on the game-winning field goal. Now, Jess, you didn't see it because you were at the game, but they were showing him. He was just calmly filming it on his iPhone, the winning kick. I mean, it was unbelievable. I can't believe he was able to hold the phone steady. That being said, while Marcus Freeman at halftime, now they had a nice drive that made it 10-3, but still they were so outplayed in the first half. While Marcus is dropping knowledge in the locker room, telling the team, history is written by conquerors and we are holding the pen. I mean, just motivating his team. What were you Notre Dame fans doing at halftime outside of double fisting drinks trying to drown your sorrows?
Crying, screaming, throwing up. Lee, my boyfriend, actually, on the way home from the game, he mentioned to me the history is written by the conquerors, when we're holding the pen. Wasn't that what Manti Te'o told the team earlier this season? It was like a little nice, like Notre Dame callback. I'm like, I think you're right. Like it's maybe a Winston Churchill quote or something. But to answer your question, Mike, halftime was so long. It was excruciating. There was a concert that I completely disassociated. I did not... Like I was non-functioning. I was non-verbal the entire game. At one point in the game, around halftime, we got nachos from concessions, and Lee was eating a nacho and bit into a piece of plastic that was in the queso. And that was really the moment that the game turned. Because after that, like Notre Dame started playing a lot better. So we saved our little plastic queso nacho debris. And I really think that it might be a lucky charm now. So that was halftime for us. He almost broke his tooth.
So are you going to bring? So we have to bring the plastic good luck charm to Atlanta now, because I'm assuming you, like us, have already made plans to now make sure that we're down in Atlanta for all this one. Because Smitty, I forget, were you at the title game that I lost back in the day? Like, were you down there in Miami for that or no?
I didn't go to that game, and I will say it was the topic. There were two things that everyone was talking about at the tailgate yesterday. The first thing was, man, the last time we were at the stadium was the title game, and there's some pretty bad feelings for a lot of fans who hadn't been back to Miami since then. The second thing was, man, Marcus Freeman did not look like he enjoyed that press conference with James Franklin. I really hope that Notre Dame wins. And that was what everyone was talking about, Mike. So no, I was not at the 2013 BCS game against Alabama. However, a couple weeks ago, I did book hotels in Atlanta. Actually, my dad did it. I was like, Dad, I don't want to be a part of planning this. I don't want to jinx anything. You do what you got to do and let me know if we win the game. But we won tickets in the lottery. So yeah, Lee and I will be in Atlanta. And I am so excited.
With the small bit of plastic.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. Were you like, I know Mike and I had talked about it. Were you at halftime while you were disassociating with the concert going on, thinking of the second half, were you thinking, hey, even if Riley Leonard's healthy, we may need to stick with Steve Angeli?
It's a really good question. I think a lot of people watched Angeli in that drive and saw that he's really good at pocket passing, and Leonard had a bad game. Like, Leonard did not play well. His second interception, I thought, was one of the worst we've seen this season. And Leonard's strength is that through the first 2 games of this playoff, he hasn't thrown any interceptable passes. He hasn't had any bad turnovers. And so even though he's more of a limited passer, if he's not turning the ball over and he can run and make plays happen on his feet, like, obviously he's your starter. So yes and no. Like, I could see why, if you were a fan, you might think, like, we have to stick with the better passer in this game. Obviously, the right call is putting Leonard back in there. I think he's more of a, dual threat and dynamic player. But especially in a game where your O-line is getting beat up, having someone that can move is definitely an asset and probably changes the game a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think winning the bad Riley Leonard game is huge for Notre Dame, and definitely something they should get credit for. But I will say Drew Aller also not his best in the Orange Bowl. So both quarterbacks not really having their best nights.
Notre Dame, the last time they had lost the turnover battle was Northern Illinois, so huge for them to manage to get out from that one and give Marcus Freeman a great early birthday present as the clock struck midnight, and it was his birthday there. So happy birthday to the man that has made us as happy as anybody in my lifetime at the helm for Notre Dame. The year 3 that we all talked about, the year 3 that was put up or shut up, has been put up in so many ways. So Jessica, go spread Notre Dame propaganda on the Levitard Show. We appreciate you joining us now. Make it insufferable for them. Make it a miserable experience for every Golden Cane there. We love you. Thank you for hopping on with us.
Thank you. It feels so good to exercise so many demons this season. The early season flop loss that should have wrecked your year, the New Year's 6 bowl game drought, the not being able to win the big one against the SEC teams, the New Year's South Florida being a place where Notre Dame can't win. Like, we've exercised all the demons now, so go win a championship.
Yeah, and you've come back well from you've come back well from laughing and crying and drinking. Nice job.
And throwing up, yeah.
Yeah.
And throwing up, yeah. Don't forget the throwing up portion. That is which is what Jess and I have in common about our responses to Notre Dame football games here. So thank you, Smetty. We appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, Smetty.
Don't read our text thread. Bye.
Yes, God, no, never, ever let that see the outside world. The deepest and darkest thoughts in the midst of Notre Dame football anguish exists between me and Jessica Smetana in text that you will never be able to subpoena out of us. Coming up next, hour number 2, Kenny Dillingham going to join us here, and we finally take the look ahead to Super Wildcard Weekend in the NFL. Which underdogs primed to pull off an upset as we head to the most wonderful time of the year?
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Guys, Magic superstar Paolo Banchero is set to return on a Friday, and since it's Friday, that means that it's acrostic time. So let's get into it. G is for give me the points in a showdown. O is for okay, let's see Josh Allen do it now. L is for lost flowers, that news was foul. I is for if you can score, Chargers defense on the prowl. C is for concussion protocol, Hertz is listening to Motown. Okay, guys. Yes, thank you, Producer Yates. That was beautiful. Guys, let's start with G. G is for give me the points. Commanders, Bucks, what do we think?
Well, first I have to start with Jesse. What happened to the hat? We bullied Emerson into wearing the hat, and now it's your hat, and the hat's not on here. What's going on?
Guys, listen, I have a ponytail right now, okay? So me trying to shove the hat on top of the ponytail was going to lead to an issue when I was then taking the hat off. You don't understand this, GoJo, because you don't have hair, so you can put hats on and off.
Okay.
No issues, right? Okay. Those of us with hair.
That seems unnecessary and cruel.
It's a fact. I was just pointing that out. But, I could have shoved the hat down over my head, but at the end of the day, I was feeling lazy and I didn't want to do it. So it's sitting on a chair over there.
Jesse, this is the playoffs. Everything is up to notch.
All right.
I mean, you got to make sacrifices.
All right, guys. You know what? Bullying works. Bring back bullying, okay? Bring back bullying.
Oh, look at that.
See,
It looks
there you
great.
go.
What are you talking about?
Look
You
at
can
that.
pull off anything, Jesse.
Yeah, move over, Alabama Jones. Here I am. I'm ready.
I was gonna say Indiana Jesse, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what we go with here.
Yeah.
Something
Perfect.
like that. It works anyway. Now the vibes are in the place that they need to be for us to actually go through and answer Jesse's questions here. And Dad, let's start off then with G on this one here and go to this Commanders game here. The Buccaneers 3-point favorites in this game that we expect that to feature a fair amount of points, right? Both defenses, certainly not the calling card on either side. Baker Mayfield, outside of the turnovers, has offered one of the more prolific quarterback performances this season. And while they're fresh off a performance that stunned us a little bit and that the Saints were able to keep it as close as it was, they do have the all-time vibes moment of getting Mike Evans over 1,000 yards for yet another season and matching Jerry Rice in that regard. So looking ahead at this game, Dad, can the Tampa Bay Buccaneers keep this rolling and beat the Washington Commanders led by Jaden Daniels? What's your thought here?
Yeah, I think they can. And by the way, that was the coolest moment of the last week of the season. Forgetting the fact that Mike Evans, while going 11 straight years of over 1,000 yards, earned himself $3 million extra, which is always nice. But that was the coolest moment when they could have knelt on the ball, and yet they got Evans do 1,000. Listen, this could turn into a boring game when Tampa Bay has the ball. We talk about Baker Mayfield and all the touchdown passes, but they're the fourth leading rushing team in the league, and Washington is second to worst at stopping the run. Now, I know Washington has won their last 5. Tampa Bay has won 6 of their last 7, so both of these teams are coming in doing a lot of winning. But I still see with Bucky Irving and Rashad White that Tampa Bay trying to control the ball with the running attack. Now, Washington doesn't miss many tackles, and you can throw out, they played the first game of the regular season. The Bucs won 37-20.
Yes.
But that was Jaden Daniels' first game as a rookie. And Tampa Bay, by the way, blitzed the hell out of them. So I don't know how much they're going to do that now that Jaden Daniels, even though, is still in his rookie season, is not a rookie anymore with the way he's playing.
No, certainly not at this point. A markedly different player and one that's gone out in year one and vibe checked the hell out of this whole organization. I'm with you, though, Dad. I think what Bucky Irvin has come in and done in year one for Tampa Bay on that Liam Cohen offense, going to be too much for the defense on the other side for the Washington Commanders here. Also going to be interesting, Marshawn Lattimore, who, listen, is a guy that knows Mike Evans really well inside that division. They brought him over, but hamstring injuries have sort of neutered what we thought that might be in terms of effectiveness. And so depending on his availability and status there, could be a long day for this pass defense on the back end for Washington. I like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this one. I will give the 3 points on that and say they get the job done there here. Jesse, what do we got next with O?
And continue to perform. So Broncos, Bills, Josh Allen having an MVP caliber season. Can he keep it up in the playoffs, guys?
Dad, I tend to think so. This is the second largest spread of the season. The Buffalo Bills, 8.5-point favorites against this great Denver Broncos defense. And it's going to be great on great when you look at this Broncos group that's been one of the best in terms of playing man coverage at an incredibly high rate all year long with Pat Surtain, but also the defensive front that gets a lot of pressure by blitzing, led by Zach Allen, their star defensive lineman. You're going up against the Bills offensive line that's only allowed 14 sacks and has Josh Allen, who might be the best sack mitigating quarterback in all of football. I just think at the end of the day, the playmaking from Josh Allen going to be too much in this game, even with the strides that Denver has made offensively. How much Bo Nix seems to have earned the trust and belief of everyone around there against a bend don't break defense for the Buffalo Bills. I just think this Bills offense right now operating at a really high level, and I will take their offensive line and Josh Allen over this Denver Broncos defensive front.
I mean, the talk of Sean Payton and starting a rookie and Bo Nix, all the offense got the talk, but it's been they're where they are because of their defense. Make no mistake about it. I mean, their defense is top 10 defense overall. Now, pass defense is about mid-level, but they do lead the league with, I think, 63 sacks. You mentioned Zach Allen, Jonathan Cooper, and Nick Bonito. Between the three of them have about 32 of the sacks. I mean, just an incredible amount of pressure, but will they be able to bring Josh Allen down? They'll get pressure, they get sacks, but this is a man-child in Josh Allen who they're trying to tackle. So, is the weather going to slow down this rush? I don't know what the weather's going to be, but it's January in Buffalo, so I expect it to be, at least if nothing else, very cold, if not any elements coming into play. So I don't know if I'll give the 8.5 because of this defense is really good, but I'll pick the Bills to win, but I'm not going to give 8.5.
Nope, I'm with you. I take the Broncos plus 8.5 in this game, but I think Buffalo does go out and get the win here. I think they've done a phenomenal job. And again, if you're going to play a bunch of man coverage against Josh Allen, do so at your own risk, because that moose breaking loose in the secondary, not a sight that any defensive back wants to see. Jesse, L, what do we got here?
L is for lost flowers in the Steelers-Ravens game. Let's take a listen to Coach John Harbaugh here.
Not going to be able to make it to the game this week, so he'll get started again next week, and we'll move forward with the guys we have, and we're excited about the guys we have, which is everybody else.
So guys, Zay Flowers not going to be able to go in this one. They've said his knee injury is not a season-ending one. He's day-to-day, but he's not going to be playing in the wild card round. He was the first Ravens wide receiver that they drafted to hit the 1,000-yard mark. Also the first Baltimore drafted wideout to earn a place in the Pro Bowl. So obviously a huge loss for them. How big of a deal is this?
Dad, it's no doubt a big deal for their Super Bowl aspirations, provided they can get him back for the postseason run. I think that would be huge. And to Jesse's point, he actually went over 1,000 yards for the season with a 100-yard performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers in their last meeting of the season, where Lamar Jackson and company kind of slayed a bit of a demon for them. The Steelers had been a hang-up for Lamar Jackson overall in his career, and we know the postseason bugaboos that everybody talks about. And so I just think at this point, Dad, the Steelers down the stretch of this season had looked too lost. The last time we saw them out playing a meaningful game, the story of the game was drops by George Pickens, who had been really the only source of offense for them outside of the numbers. They can hand the ball off to Najee Harris and do an okay job, but Baltimore's run defense has been stout all year long. Michael Pierce, so good at run defense, he's now moonlighting as a wide receiver, ending games on interceptions. And so I think even without Zay Flowers, the rushing attack led by Derrick Henry going to be too potent, and that Baltimore defense just has the answers now for a Pittsburgh Steelers offense that I just think lost whatever juice it had after inserting Russell Wilson into the lineup.
Yeah, this is a team that had the division lead with 4 games to go, and they lost their last 4 games, and Baltimore won their last 4 games to flip-flop at the top. And while Zay Flowers is out, he's a guy that can stretch the defense. Look for the second tight end, though he'd be probably first tight end on a lot of teams, Isaiah Likely, as the likely person, pun fully intended, to stretch the field. I think he certainly has the ability to do that. But I'm calling this game. I can't pick this game. But to me, the biggest difference is how the year ended. You know, after Russell Wilson started, the last 4 games are 0-4. They're averaging just 14 points a game, just 174 pass yards a game, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Total yards, they went from 372 to 258. And on the flip side, the Baltimore defense in the first weeks 1 through 10, they were the worst as far as pass defense and close to last in other categories. But 11 through 18, they only given up 15 points a game, 171 passing yards as opposed to 294 passing yards. And opponents' third down, they're number 1 in opponent third down, number 1 in passing yards a game, number 1 in total yards a game, number 1 in points per game in weeks 11 to 18. So they've kind of righted the pass defense ship, and Pittsburgh just can't score enough points.
No, as has been documented, Kyle Hamilton and Ardarius Washington seem to have settled that group at safety, and the rest has now been history. Jesse, let's buzz through I and C here. What do we got?
Yeah, I is for if you can score. So the Texans have been struggling offensively. Do you see them being able to have some success against the Chargers?
By the way, Dad can't pick the Ravens game. I will pick the Baltimore Ravens in that one, and I'll actually give the points. I think they could rock their world even without Zay Flowers here. Dad, for Chargers and Texans, this one could be a bit of a rock fight. Over under 41.5 in a game where the Chargers are 3-point favorites here. I probably lean Chargers, Dad, just because the Texans offense has looked so lost. Now, I get it on the other side. Awesome strength on strength matchup when you look at the edge rushers in Danielle Hunter and company for the Houston Texans against Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackles for the Chargers here. I think Herbert showed they can make some plays. Houston a little more vulnerable in the slot where you can get Ladd McConkey lined up with some good matchups here. And on the other side, this Chargers defense, especially in the red zone, has been money against a Houston team that all year long the revolving door of injury at wide receiver seems to have really hampered them.
Yeah, listen, it's going to come down to big play guys, Nico Collins for the Texans and Ladd McConkey, who has been unbelievably effective in the slot. But the Texans have actually defensed the slot pretty well. So obviously, I think it comes down to those two receivers. I like the Chargers in this one. It's interesting. Justin Herbert has a career low in yards per game passing, I think 227. But his rating is as high as I think has ever. He has a career best, almost 102 rating. So he's been more efficient with the ball. Ladd McConkey plays and is the Ladd McConkey we've seen this rookie year. I think the Chargers win and cover. The Chargers are the only road team favored in this wild card round.
Going to be interesting, too, the injury report for them. Quentin Johnston, questionable. J.K. Dobbins, questionable. Eli Apple, Denzel Perryman, Semi Fehoko, a bunch of guys, and you already have Josh Palmer out with a foot in that receiving core that's certainly limited. So it's going to be about who they get there and who can be on the field for them. But if all things are equal and they are healthy, I do think they have a good shot. Let's get to C and Cash It or Trash It, presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours here. Dad, Packers at Eagles. The Eagles a 4.5-point favorite in this one right now. It sounds like Jalen Hurts is trending towards playing. He's been back in practice, waiting to get the final word on him being cleared. But if he can go, do you think the Eagles can win and cover?
Oh, he's playing. I mean, he practiced limited Wednesday, full on Thursday. Going to clear a concussion protocol. He's going to be playing. And I think the Eagles are just overall too good. Once Cooper DeJean started playing the slot, this defense, just so much improved, and saying that about a rookie is pretty impressive. But they shored up their linebackers from last year. They haven't had the injuries that they had last year, and they're playing lights out right now. Jordan Love coming off the elbow injury, which affected his hand. Quite honestly, they need Josh Jacobs to run and have a game, even though Philly is really good against the run. Josh Jacobs, 15 rushing touchdowns, over 1,300 yards to help control the ball and keep possessions down for Philadelphia. I think that's Green Bay's way to win this game, but I don't think it'll be enough. I like the Eagles, and I'll give the 4.5.
I agree. I think the Eagles, fully healed here, if Jalen Hurts is in the lineup, can absolutely roll. You mentioned Cooper DeJean. Since he took over as the nickel after the Week 5 bye, the Eagles have allowed just 5.2 yards per slot target in Week 6 through 18. That's almost 1.5 yards fewer than any other defense. He has been the skeleton key that's helped unlock Vic Fangio's group and turn them into one of the best in the NFL, where they are now a team fully expected to compete alongside the Detroit Lions and the Vikings for that Super Bowl spot. With
everybody in California who is affected by these wildfires right now, it's devastating to see, the sheer level of destruction, the loss. People are really going through it right now, and we care deeply about them and are thinking about everybody and hope everybody stays safe. The NFL has rightfully decided to move the wild card game location for the Rams-Vikings. It's now going to be played in Arizona. That was always the backup plan. We'd heard about that at the beginning of the week. They have officially moved it to Arizona. Just to get into the nuts and bolts of it, guys, does this change anything? I was reading that the game was basically a pick'em. The line moved a little bit in the Vikings' favor when this change was announced.
Well, I think from a football sense, and again, we talked about this yesterday, it's hard to really quantify what the impact might be, Dad, of what the Rams have been through this week in the lead up. We talked about how players on all these teams are members of their community, and God, you saw that underscored so much by a different Los Angeles team, as Los Angeles Lakers head coach J.J. Redick's rental home was one of the homes in the Pacific Palisades that unfortunately was lost in the fires. And so him dealing with the displacement of that is just one very unfortunately jarring example of, I'm sure, what all of these guys, I saw there was a fire that started the other day near where the Rams practice facility in Woodland Hills was. And so it showing up on your front door like that, having to be in the back of your mind all week long, I'm sure has weighed on these players and coaches as they get ready for this game. And so it does make it even more of an uphill battle against an already really good Vikings team.
So from a technical standpoint, both teams just treat it like an away game, right? Especially Minnesota. Minnesota flying to LA or flying to Arizona. It doesn't matter. It's an away game either way. So I don't think anything really changes for them. For LA, again, you can treat it like an away game. Even though you're the home team, treat it like an away game. And the league was smart in making this decision early enough. They needed to, obviously, for the LA area, but also for the teams to be able to construct their plans to go on the road. But the difference is absolutely what you and Jesse were talking about is the players, the support staff. Do you have family that's in any danger, or the issues that you're going through that you're now going to leave? Hopefully it continues, it gets better, but now they're going to leave. Now that they're flying and they're leaving their families, and what every person wherever they live is in a different situation. So that's the issue here, and that's always been the issue. But at least if they played at home, they would be home to be with their family outside of the game. Now they're flying. Now they're traveling. Now they're going to be gone. So yeah, that's the issue for the Rams is are there, depending again on the player, on the support staff, on the preparation that you're doing, how much in the mind of if your family and your house, your property is in danger.
Yeah, and again, just to update people on the latest here that we've seen from this now, unfortunately, there are at least 10 people that have lost their lives during the course of this. More than 9,000 structures damaged or destroyed in these fires here, with at least 130,000 residents under evacuation orders. So it has been everywhere out here, and in talking to people that have been out here their whole lives, the level of destruction is something that very few of anyone has ever seen out there. So this is truly unprecedented in terms of what Los Angeles dad has dealt with.
And again, it's not unprecedented in the NFL moving a game. Back in 2003, because of the wildfires, there was a Monday night game that involved the San Diego Chargers that was moved to Arizona. So this has been done before because of the wildfire. So that was a regular season game. This obviously a playoff game. But listen, no question the thoughts are more with the people who are all dealing with this, the first responders that are in there battling, the people that have lost their homes, and unfortunately, the people that have lost their lives. I mean, and just the devastation that has gone on in one of the worst disasters there that has been. It's just it's tough to talk about a sport, but this game is going to go on Monday in Arizona. So obviously Monday we'll have more time to talk about it and break it down.
Yeah, certainly that'll be the case there. But like you said, thinking everyone around here, and there's a lot of organizations you can look and find online ways to help here. I know the NFL and college football was promoting the American Red Cross and the work they're doing. But if you're out here in Los Angeles, I mean, I've seen people at churches with U-Hauls just getting together to get products, to get the kind of things that people have lost in these fires to try and help the people that have been displaced here. There's people taking, food and water to try and get them over there, supplies for people that have young children who are now displaced without that. So if you are able to do something to help out and pitch in and help these people get back on their feet during a trying time, go and check it out. Again, there's tons of information. I'll keep posting it, and I know others have, of ways you're looking to help here. And we'll try and, continue to get more of that in front of you as we go along here, because there are going to be a lot of people that are trying to recover, and a lot of whom won't have the means to. I know everyone thinks of that area in the Palisades and thinks of wealth, but all across Southern California, there are plenty of hardworking people who have poured their lives into homes that they'll never see again for all the reasons that we've seen now. So, the no easy transition portion of things, but back into talking about the world of regular sports and the trivial things that go on in our slice of the pie here, Dad. Elsewhere, we've talked about the coaching cycle a lot in recent weeks here, and especially this last week coming off Week 18 in the NFL, where you go through Black Monday and you see some of the firings. And one of the interesting ones in so many ways has become the Las Vegas Raiders, who had an abysmal season. They fire Antonio Pierce, a one-and-done head coach, after being the interim last year. And it initially retained general manager Tom Telesco, who was also a one-and-done hire there. And you look, brought in Brock Bowers and a few other compelling draft choices there. But now, as Tom Brady and his influence as minority owner is going to be probably overstated and understated and everywhere in between, because we don't exactly know how much power he's wielding inside that organization. At the very least, now Dad has cleared space as they announced that Tom Telesco would be fired here along with Antonio Pierce. And so whoever comes in and takes this job for the Las Vegas Raiders, now going to be able to do so, Dad, at head coach and GM, walking in lockstep, walking in, you would hope, on the same page. As we talked about, it has generally been the good rule of thumb when it comes to building a competent organization. Were you surprised at all by the timing for this?
Well, yeah, I thought they would have done it in concert with Antonio Pierce, not wait a day later, because it looked like Telesco, from the thought, was going to keep his job. Now, there are 6 head coaching jobs available, but only 2, if memory serves, only 2 GM spots, right? Vegas and the Jets. Joe Douglas was let go as well. So the natural way to do things is to select a GM first and then have the GM part of the selection committee for the coach, so they can work hand in hand. We've certainly seen it done the other way as well, but I would, from the power structure standpoint, would certainly hire a GM first, as there are 6 teams scrambling to hire new head coaches, and sometimes there's a race to do that. Remember, you can't have in-person interviews for anybody who's still in the playoffs until after the divisional round. We know Ben Johnson has been doing it by Zoom, and obviously Aaron Glenn as well, and others that are still in the playoffs. But that there's going to be a pecking order to coaches hired, but you need me personally, I think for the Jets in Vegas, you need to hire GMs before you hire head coaches.
Well, that'll be interesting, Dad, because I think it'll tell us a lot about the power structure going forward. And again, we don't really know what the power structure looks like within the Vegas organization right now. And if you are out here, let's say, trying to lure in a candidate like Mike Vrabel, who I think, were it not for the Tom Brady of it all in Las Vegas, I don't know how realistic of an opportunity that would be for that team. Does having him as the head coach matter more to you than who's brought in at GM? And how would that change the dynamic for those two going forward in terms of who gets final say on the roster and everything like that? But I think especially because you are disadvantaged as the Las Vegas Raiders right now. You're not a team that has a quarterback that you can sell. You're not an organization that could sell a bunch of recent success. And the roster overall still needs a fair amount of work. Although, like we mentioned, Brock Bowers, who could win Offensive Rookie of the Year, seems like a great piece to at least start to build around. If you can show Max Crosby you're serious about winning still and retain him on defense, all of these things could potentially be it. But, Dad, as we look at the jobs available this offseason, the Raiders by no means in the 1 or probably even 2 spot in terms of the appeal to a coach.
No, they're one of the 3 teams that is not have a quarterback, right? New England has a quarterback. Chicago has a quarterback. Jacksonville has a quarterback. The Jets don't. Las Vegas doesn't. New Orleans, I don't know where they are with Derek Carr. I don't know what that situation is going to be. But regardless, he's not the long-term answer for a new head coach, is Derek Carr. So I think the solid jobs are New England, Chicago, and Jacksonville. So New England, Chicago are definitely the most appealing, right? Young quarterbacks, the 1 and 2 as far as cap space available. So those seem to be the higher ranking 2 of the 6 available.
Yeah, I would absolutely say those ones up there. And I know it feels reductive sometimes to just whittle it down to quarterback, but we talk all the time about how hard that is to find in this league. And if you've got one that either is already under contract and has showed you something, even if it's flawed a la Trevor Lawrence, or you've got one that showed early promise in a situation that really should have given him no reason to, in Drake May in New England, then those are definitely a feather in the cap. And then you throw in all the weapons that a team like Chicago has, where the edict is basically just going to be, Dad, hey, go fix the offensive line. There are a few teams like they're out that this offseason where if you're Chicago, if you're Seattle, you see the offensive lines that are winning people games in December, January, February football around the league right now. And you see the opportunity you've got with your skill players to go out there and make it work. And it should be easy, but we know there's such a limited quantity of talent at those positions. And so it'll be very, very interesting. But it does seem like at this point now, Dad, we're probably out of the woods in terms of the jobs that will continue to come open overall. That's why the timing of this Raiders job was so surprising. And so and now we kind of get to wait and see on this one. And it will be interesting. I know I've seen a lot of people that talk about Tom Brady's future in the booth and would he be a one and done here or not here and how this relays in. It's certainly a guy with a lot on his plate, however you want to slice it. The fact that Tom Brady is right now getting ready to do this and will potentially and be the one calling the Super Bowl this year for Fox is pretty amazing for a guy who really dove into retirement head first.
Yeah, we've certainly seen former players jump into management roles, i.e. John Elway, and others have done it as well. But I don't know the power structure for Tom Brady in being a minority owner of the team. I think, and again, I'm not there, I don't know. We know he's going to be involved. It's already been stated. He'll be involved in who the next quarterback will be. But other than that, I don't know the power structure if he's going to have a hand in the draft. I would lean toward no, that he's not going to, but he will have a say in who the quarterback is going to be because obviously he's the GOAT. I think it's going to be blinders on and he's going to be specific to the quarterback.
We'll see. Like, this is all new for Tom Brady, right? And we knew that when he took over in the broadcast booth, and everybody had an opinion and still does about how he's doing in there and the job that he will do in the future and on down the list. But Tom Brady, Dad, is also in that early phase of making that transition from his old life to his new life, and you just wonder what he'll get a taste for. He's not worked in a front office before in any meaningful capacity, and while he technically isn't now, he's in ownership. He's getting involved in this process, and it'll just be interesting to see what he develops a taste for and what that will lead to in a future where he does have a lot of options. Whatever you want to say about Tom Brady right now, he's got a lot of options in terms of people that will use his football acumen, whether that's in the broadcast booth or whether that's in the front office for this Raiders team trying to get that franchise back to relevance, ironically enough, after Tom Brady years ago ruined everybody's lives around there. So again, the latest out of there, Tom Telesco, the GM, goes one and done and joins Antonio Pierce on the way out for that organization. The board seems set in terms of the teams now that will be looking for head coaches. And as Dad mentioned, only two looking for general manager in them and the New York Jets trying to go out of their way. Trent Baalke still somewhere hanging on for dear life against all odds. But coming up next, as we get set to wrap up the semifinal round of the college football playoff tonight, let's visit with one of the coaches that was the surprise darling of this college football playoff season. Kenny Dillingham, head coach of the Arizona State Sun Devils, going to stop. Exciting night of college football. What's been a really great postseason run overall as the college football playoff field expanded to 12 for the first time this season. And for more on what that experience has been like, delighted to welcome back in Arizona State head football coach Kenny Dillingham, kind enough to give us some time this morning here. Coach, good morning. How you doing?
I'm phenomenal. I mean, like we were just talking about off air, it's a cold day here at 55 degrees. So
yeah. Yeah, a cold day and you're up early because the machine never stops, and you guys have plenty going on there at Arizona State after an incredible, successful season here, going out in the Big 12 and making noise, making it into the college football playoff in this inaugural 12-team season. Coach, I know we had a big game last night. We'll talk to you about that some and the Texas team that you guys face coming up, but I know everyone's different with this. Do you watch the games after you guys are done playing? Did you watch last night, and will you watch the Cotton Bowl coming up tonight?
Oh, of course. I mean, I'm a football fan. I love football. I mean, I'm obsessed with it. And the only person more obsessed with it than I am is my wife. She's the one who's like, oh, the game's on tonight. We got to get game food. I'm like, what is game food? Wings, burgers. Like, we got to eat game food tonight to watch the game. Like, that's how she's wired. She loves ball just as much as I do. And that's why, we've been together since we were 17. It's a hobby of ours, not just a profession.
I was going to say, you married up if she's planning football snacks. There's no doubt about that. we were talking off air about how it's recruiting time now and you move to the next phase, but you win 6 straight to get into the playoffs. You play Texas, you outgain them. You have the ball for 15 more minutes. You go to 2 overtimes. There's the controversial non-targeting call in there. Have you been able to put that game away and move on to the next phase, or is there still the what ifs that kind of cloud your dreams?
I wouldn't say, I don't think I'll ever put it away. I think anytime you play in a game of that magnitude, it's going to haunt you or at least be there forever. And I'm sure you guys have both had those moments where you go back and you're like, oh my gosh, we were right there. And so do I think I'll ever put that game away? No. Have I moved on to the next chapter? Oh, yes. I mean, you can't let that moment distract you from what we're in right now to get to where we want to go. But yeah, that's that game, and some of those moments are gonna haunt me forever.
Well, how do you use that moment, though, in a positive going forward, Coach? The experience you have, being able to talk to maybe recruits and everyone else about your experience, winning a conference, getting to the college football playoff. How does that serve you guys going forward?
Well, I think one of the biggest negatives, when we're talking to recruits, when I first got here, and obviously the program was in a different state as it is now. And I think people used to, can you win there? Is the fan base engaged? It's a city. Most big cities don't have, rabid, exciting fan bases. Can you make it the show in town and people care? And can you win championships? And I think we proved we can do that this year. I think we proved you can live in a place where people vacation. You can have sold out crowds. You can win championships, and you can put on a light jacket on a cold day in the winter at Arizona State. And there's not many places you can do that. And I think we've proved that. We've checked a lot of boxes to these recruits, and you can be developed. You can take a guy who didn't even play last year, wasn't on the radar, and put him on the radar to be the Biletnikoff winner for this coming year, Jordan Tyson. You put a guy from Sac State in the top 5 in the Heisman. You took a dude who was a backup at Michigan State, who was an absolute stud, and now he's going to be one of the Heisman candidates. You took a guy, Xavier Alford, who didn't play at his last 2 schools and was first team all conference in the Big 12. And those are just some of them. Why not ASU?
Before we look ahead to this Texas game that you guys had played in the first round, what was your message to the team in the last meeting you had before, whether it was right after the game or when you came back after the game? What was your message? My message was, if we all would have, it was in the locker room, like, hey, I don't like to reflect. We never talked about how great of a year it was once all year. We just talked about the moment at hand. And the message was, it's over. Let's reflect. And if we could all sit here in misery right now and say that we would have the opportunity to sit here in misery, being Big 12 champs, going into double OT and losing to Texas, now that we get to reflect on this, we all would have checked the box like, holy cow, to start this season. So even though this sucks, now that it's over, let's reflect a little bit and make sure we leave this locker room with our heads held high, because those guys did something special this year. I saw it was like the 6th biggest championship, odds winning in the history of Vegas. It was the number 1 in college sports. The history of college sports was our guys winning the Big 12 title and where they started. So they better appreciate what they accomplished this year now that it's over. If we would have won the game, it would have been a whole different speech. But when it's over, you can really start to reflect on the positives of what we accomplished.
Well, there's certainly a lot that you guys have accomplished, and the way you've gone about it, Coach, it's been well documented, your approach to your guys out there in the portal, the way you've championed guys finding that next home, even if it's not with Arizona State, while they've helped you, has all been a ton of fun to watch for all of us. So congratulations on a great season in that regard and the way that you guys have handled business. I do want to look ahead tonight, though, because you've got incredible insight, having faced this Texas team in the college football playoff, about what we should expect. Not a lot of people giving them a chance as underdogs going up against Ohio State tonight. What impressed you about seeing Steve Sarkisian and that program up close, and how do you think they match up with this Buckeyes team?
Yeah, I think perimeter toughness. I think sometimes when you're at a school that has a bunch of really highly recruited kids, the athletes don't want to be physical. The athletes don't want to hit people. The athletes want to athlete. And I think one thing when you watch this Texas team and when you play this Texas team, their best players are their most physical players. specifically on defense. Their defensive backs are making tackles. There's a play I was watching with Sam the other day, 7 for them. Blitzes off the edge at corner, stops Sam, bends back by the line of scrimmage, collisions Sam, stops him 1 yard short of a touchdown, in which they ended up holding us in our goal line stand. Those are the plays that make that football team, is their physicality, not just up front, but on the edge. And then offensively, I think it's the calmness. I think their quarterback's extremely calm. I think their perimeter skill is really good. And I think their quarterback gets them into really, really good football plays consistently to try to, in those critical moments, like he did versus us on the 4th and 12, which is just a pain to say out loud, but it was a phenomenal job by him. And I think that's going to be the greatest challenge, or the greatest thing to watch this game is, how do they tackle on the perimeter? How do they defeat perimeter blocks, which I think they'll do well. And then offensively, getting into good plays.
So just about a minute left, Coach. How would you go about defensing true freshman Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State, who's just had an incredible year?
Your bet's as good as mine. I've watched that guy a few times in crossover. That dude's unbelievable. He's incredible. I think that the thing that Texas has is they have, a guy who won an award for being the best defensive back. And I think in games like this, you've got to be able to win one-on-one matchups. And you can't just double a guy the entire game when you have the weapons that Ohio State has. It'd be one thing if he was the only weapon on the field, and you can say, we got to take away this guy and we'll win the box down a hat all game. You can't just do that versus a good football team. So they're going to have to disguise things and get the quarterback to leave him when he's actually in single coverage. So I think one of the keys to the game will be the matchup of moving the quarterback's eyes off of him when he's actually being singled up. Because if he knows he's singled up, he's going to throw him the football. So how do you move the quarterback's eyes off of him while also being singled up? And I think that's going to be one of the hidden things from a coaching perspective within this game that's going to be huge.
It's going to be exciting to watch. If it's half as good a game as what we got in the Orange Bowl last night, everybody is going to be better for it. Coach, congratulations on all the success this season. Best of luck with everything in the offseason as you guys continue to hit the ground running and build something really special there in the Valley. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all having me, and enjoy your next round out in AZ.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I was going to say, you're going to need a lot. I'm surprised you didn't ask Kenny Dillingham. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. If you tuned in for the first time today to watch us burp up takes about Notre Dame football, welcome. We do this 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern every day. You can check us out wherever you get your podcast. The DraftKings Network's on Samsung TV Plus, Roku, Xumo Play, all these great places, in addition to the GoJo Golic YouTube channel, where you can always check us out there as well for a one-stop shop for all things content-wise. Thank you to our friend Jessica Smetana from the Dan Le Batard Show, who joined us in hour number 1 to talk about that Notre Dame game, and Arizona State head coach Kenny Dillingham, who just joined us in the last segment to talk about their season and what to expect from Texas as they take on Ohio State tonight. You can check out all those interviews wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. And guys, let's start off this, that, and the third. Dad, for years on Mike and Mike, you were known for the donut rating for a lot of movies. You take in more content than anyone I've ever met here. And so 2025, a lot of movies out here getting ready to be released here. I don't know about you, and if you've got a favorite that's coming out in the year. I did not realize they're still making Saw movies. The Insidious franchise has also gone that route, as we've got Insidious number 6. I have not been as excited for a movie in years, and I am someone who definitely majors in the post-apocalyptic genre. I loved Station 11 on HBO, and I love the 28 Days, 28 Years franchise, and we are getting 28 years later finally coming out this season, revisiting the franchise launched by 28 Days Later, one of my favorite in the genre of all time, and so that's the one I'm most excited for in the coming year. I don't know if you have one.
Well, listen, Marvel, Captain America, I'm into the Marvel and the superhero type of movies. I like those. You know what's intriguing to me is The Accountant 2. Ben Affleck, and The Accountant got, the amount of money he got paid for the amount of words he said in that movie had to be astounding. But I'm eerily kind of looking forward to that one. I've seen all the Saw movies. They're ridiculous now, but I have to watch it. Saw 11 is coming out. And A series, I consume a lot on the streaming services of series. Peaky Blinders was a great series, and now they're coming out with a Peaky Blinders movie. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I was really, really into the series.
Yeah, I never actually made it down the Peaky Blinders rabbit hole, so unfortunately I won't be walking down that path with you there. I did just see this one, though, and Dad, Jesse, I don't know where either of you are at with this franchise, but I have said one of the most stable forces in my life, two movie franchises I trust implicitly, are the John Wick franchise. I will see every John Wick movie they make or tangent movie to that franchise until they stop making them. And Knives Out, and we have Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery that's coming out. We had Glass Onion a while back here, and I will see those movies as well in perpetuity. They do a phenomenal job. They are always incredibly entertaining cinema. You can do the rest of the other takes in there, but to me, that's one of the most entertaining franchises there are, so count me in for that too.
Uh-oh, we can't hear you, Jesse. Oh, yeah, may have to turn that mic on. Yeah.
Okay, you mean now? Now you got me? Good.
Yeah,
okay.
there you go.
Yeah, there we go.
That was freaky, kind of like Freakier Friday that's going to be coming out, okay? That's a big one. It's part of the Lindsay Lohan Renaissance. So I'll be tuning in for that one. But yeah, the Knives Out ones are so good. I can't wait for that.
I do like those.
Well, speaking of movies, Jesse, let's get to that as two former movie stars as children now teamed up to get married as adults.
Yeah, so basically more than 2 decades after meeting on the set of School of Rock, two of the child stars have tied the knot. They're married. So Angelo Masagli and Caitlin Hale, they were 10 years old when they first auditioned for School of Rock. Pretty crazy. So they were just little kids. They starred in this movie. They both left the industry, actually. Okay, so one's a lawyer, one's an OBGYN sonographer. They met again at the University of Florida. All the kids had kept in touch in a group chat, apparently, but they were both at the University of Florida, so they got lunch together, and then that just snowballed into a romance, and here we are. It's just a fairy tale ending.
Yeah, I was going to say for Hale, she's an OBGYN ultrasound tech, and Masagli is practicing law at a major music company. But Dad, I'm always happy when child actors and child stars end up doing well because, man, you're inundated with a lot so early on. We talk about prodigies, whether it's in sports or in the arts, and just how dangerous that can be to have that much thrown on your plate early. So I'm glad the School of Rock kids are doing all right. Good for them.
It's a movie I didn't see. Jack Black is the star of it. But I never saw the movie. But yeah, it seems the more successful child actors are the ones that got out of acting, the ones that went to something else like these two did. But the cast came to the wedding, kind of reunion of the cast from 2003. So that's a very cool moment. I like how they kind of reconnected, both in school, pursuing different degrees from, outside of acting. So a very cool ending for a movie back from 2 decades ago.
And I guess just what are the odds that you work on a movie together and then both end up going to the same college? I don't know. Yeah. Math and the universe are a strange place where everything can come together there. I didn't see, was Jack Black at the wedding? Did he get the invite on that one?
He wasn't there. He might have gotten the invite, but he did not attend.
I was going to say, you at least have to invite him so he sends the gift. You assume and maybe hope that he can't come at that point here. I don't know how close you are because, all the kids bond on set probably different than having Jack Black around there. But at the very least, the man has accumulated a lot of money over the years. And so I would try and take some of that in the form of the gift. Jesse, you've been married most recently. I feel like there's a group of guests on everyone's wedding list where you kind of know and expect they're not going to come, but you also know and believe that they are capable of a good gift.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, now everybody has wedding registries. You have your wedding registry. And I remember when I was doing my wedding registry, I had a lot of middle of the road stuff, some cheaper stuff. I don't want to pressure people into buying me something expensive. And I had a friend who was like, nah, you gotta register for some high-end stuff because there's people who want to buy that for you. And they were right.
Oh yeah, people that have money and can't make it and want to make up for the fact that they can't make it will spend a few extra bucks. So yeah, you got to have some high-end stuff on the registry without question.
My coffee machine, very expensive, and it is a wedding gift.
Hey, no risk it, no biscuit. That's the rule when it comes to the registry here. Jesse, let's finish off the show in the day with the third. What do we got here?
AJ Brown has an interesting theory on cheese. Just listen to this.
You know, I have this theory about cheese. Most cheese don't be real. So all the cheese lovers out there, try to burn the cheese. And if it don't burn, do not eat it.
Okay, what? So his theory is that most cheese isn't real. You have to burn it. So my question is this, AJ Brown. What is it if it's not real? What do you mean? We're eating it.
I think
he
means it's I think he means it's more processed. You know, just like about everything is processed.
Oh, so if you take like a Kraft single and try to light it on fire, it's just like flame retardant, and that's what we're saying?
Probably
I
isn't
do
going
wonder
to
what a Kraft single would do in an open flame. Can you fondue a Kraft single? I'm not sure.
I also didn't know that setting fire to cheese was the ultimate test that will prove if it's cheese or not. I don't know how, if he read that somewhere or if he came up with that or if he experimented with that. I mean, but who thinks of putting a flame on a cheese outside of making a fondue to test if your cheese is real or not?
Yeah, I have no idea. Is that his own theory or is that something that's widely known? Because I've never heard of that before.
See, it's tough because I usually distrust jacked wide receivers because most of them are like Chad Johnson and DK Metcalf, where their diet subsists of like McDonald's or candy, but God bless them with the metabolism of a Greek god. And so they can go out there and withstand that. And most of their food takes are founded in nonsense. But I don't know if AJ Brown is of that category. And so, Dad, I will withhold that judgment from him.
Well, and listen, it's not going to change the cheese I eat. I'm not going to start flaming my cheese to see if it's real. I eat cheese that I eat, whether it's real or not. It's like, I don't care what's in a hot dog. I'm going to eat a hot dog. You know, there's some things you don't want to know and some things you'll test. I'll eat a hot dog knowing that what can be in it. And I will not flame my cheese to see if it's real. I'm just going to eat it.
Team no flaming cheese. Okay, got it.
I do one thing and one thing only with my cheese, and that's cut it. We will be back here Monday for you guys, like we always are, to break down everything from Super Wildcard Weekend. Go ahead and download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave it a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Go Irish. Good luck to the